Appalachia, a word that evokes a whole passel of reactions. Everything from the beauty of a mountaintop to trailer parks, drugs, and about everything in between. The Appalachian Mountains are indeed the oldest mountains in the world. They once towered 30,000 feet into the air. They stretch from eastern Canada through 14 states all the way to Louisiana. The folks who live in these mountains have faced an unending number of tragic and just plain odd happenings that cry out for the telling. Hello, I'm Larry Bentley, and I was born and raised in these very mountains by a family who themselves were born, raised, and lived for generations in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. Come with me, and we'll take a look at some of the unending stories that come from within my beloved mountains, and we'll take a look through the eyes of an Appalachian at some from outside the area as well. Welcome to Season 5 of Appalachian Murder, Mystery, and Legend. Howdy, my good friends. I hope you're having a good day today, and thank you so much for stopping by. Now, being this is Thanksgiving week, I hope y'all have a wonderful holiday season, and don't forget to eat an extra piece of pie for me while you're at it. Happy Thanksgiving, all. But now down to business. A long time before there was a Zodiac killer wreaking havoc all over California, or Son of Sam was walking around blowing people away with his .44 Magnum, or even Ted Bundy was even a gleam in his daddy's eye. You know that he probably ended up wishing somebody would have slapped out of him. Well, there was a unknown and little heard of piece of dog squeeze called 3X, or that's what he called himself anyway. He claimed that his killing was special because he had a reason to walk around busting caps into whoever he thought needed a good cap busting. Was good enough to write it all down in letters, which he sent to investigators. Of course, like the wackadoodle mind does, they were written so that the investigators really couldn't know what most of it meant. Now, he claimed to be part of an international agency of anti-communist nutballs. For one long hot summer in 1930, he pretty much held New York City in complete terror. Now, come on in, have yourself a sit down. Let me tell you about Mr. 3X, the man behind the gun. Now, folks might think this one is out there for the time it took place and ought to start with the once upon a time. But it's true, and it all started on June 11th, 1930, on one of them lovers' lanes that we all remember. I think just about every town, city, country, or county, or place in the general location even in this country probably has one. There's one down in my old stomping grounds in Virginia. It was so well known that its official name is Lover's Lane, and it runs through parts of about 3 different counties, all winding around. Anyway, this Lover's Lane was near the College Point neighborhood near Queens, New York. Now, for those of us who remember, that's where Archie Bunker used to live, in Queens. That's where a fella named Joseph Mosinski, who was a 39-year-old grocery store owner, was out there with a 19-year-old girl named Catherine May. They'd just settled in, probably doing what everybody claimed, which was just sitting there talking with the windows all steamed up and half their clothes on backwards like everybody did whenever the police stopped by and asked anybody from behind the flashlight. Probably about the time that they were looking through the fogged up windshield and talking about, wonder where all that fog rolled in from, a stranger slid up on them. He was a short, skinny little feller that spoke with a real heavy German accent. The man walked up to the driver's side window and recognized Mr. Mosinski, kind of like he'd been looking for him. The candidate for top Nazi in charge whipped out a gun and popped Mr. Mosinski twice in the face. Right about the time he realized there wasn't no fog rolling in, his windshield was just steamed up from all the talking. As Mr. Mosinski was doing the weakling's trembles and slumping over all but dead in his seat, the killer reached in his pocket, pulled out some official-looking papers that looked a whole lot like that stack of papers you get complimentary of the court that come with a divorce. He then pulled out a Zippo and promptly burned them up, or set them on fire anyway, and threw them on the ground. Miss May, who the piece of dog squeeze didn't kill, was grabbed by the side of the face, dragged out the steamed-up car window, and outraged by the nutball while the documents burned on the ground beside him, and Mr. Mosinski finished up his death rails all humped over the steering wheel. After he was done, he took out a notepad and wrote down her name and address, goose-stepped her over to the nearest bus stop, shoved a gun in her ribs, and made her join him for a nice evening jaunt aboard the bus. As they boarded the Silver Eagle, he slipped her a little folded up piece of paper. He told her something along the lines, "Don't read it till tomorrow, else something bad's going to happen." I reckon because it wasn't bad enough already. Now, he rode the bus with her, probably giving her that "I'd soon drop you right here's look at you" set of eyeballs that lunatics have before he just promptly got up and walked off the bus after a few stops. Miss May figured, well, what's he going to do now if he's gone? So she unfolded a mini manifesto and looked it over. It said, Joseph Mazinski, 3X, 3-X-097, and looked like it had been stamped out in red ink. Now, that didn't make a lick of sense to her, so she proceeded on home, probably locked the door behind her and sat with her back to the wall and a shotgun across her lap. Now, she was so traumatized by the whole thing that she didn't even report anything to the police. And when the investigators found Mr. Mazinski and his freshly vented head, the next day they just so happened to find her jacket in the car and tracked her down from that. She was so tore up that she couldn't hardly tell them anything, and everything that she did say was pretty much inconsistent, which immediately rose her to the top of the suspicion ladder. Investigators turned up the heat on her for the next 3 days straight. They got up a whole load of conflicting stories from her, probably because she wanted to keep secret the fact that she'd been polishing belt buckles with Mr. Mazinski, who just happened to be married with 2 children, and they'd been going at it for over 2 years. After that 3-day turn and burn session, and while Miss May was still sitting in jail, a bombshell letter was sent to the New York Evening Post, or Evening Journal, I'm sorry. It said, "Kindly print this letter in your paper for Mr. Mazinski's friends." It said CC-NY-ADCM-Y16A DQRPA, and then went to 241 PM6 Queens. By doing this, you may save their lives, and women may know where the missing papers are and who has them since they were given to Mazinski. We do not have any more shooting unless we have to. And it was signed 3X, the man behind the gun. The letter had been postmarked before Mr. Mazinski's body had even been found. Combined with Miss May's story, there wasn't any doubt amongst the investigators that it was written by the killer. Now, the Evening Journal published a nice story that evening about the murder, but didn't say a word about the message from Mr. 3X. The next day, another letter showed up. It said, "Gentlemen, for your information, the young lady, Miss C. May, involved in this case is innocent and a victim of unfortunate circumstances. Mazinski was nothing but a rascal, a dirty rat. Not 2 women, as stated in the papers, but 6 and two young girls, one 14, one 15, were with him in the same place during some time. I am the agent of a secret international order, and when I met Mazinski that night, he was to retrieve certain documents, and I was to take them from him. Unfortunately, they were not in his possession. If his relatives knew of his luck with women, maybe they would tell us what became of the following items. It's NYX-2673, NJ4344, Philadelphia XB346. These papers must be returned to us at once, or 14 more of Mazinski's friends, well, it says pretty much have their heads vented too. Mazinski's relatives and friends have until Monday at 12 o'clock p.m. to bring these documents to us, or to inform us where to find them. If no answer is received, we will start merry hell on them. 3X, the man behind the gun." Right under the signature was an unusual symbol, an inverted V over top of a right side up V, which made the investigators sit there and scratch their heads. Mr. 3X didn't wait long to make good on his threat either. On June 16th, Noel Soley, who was a 26-year-old radio mechanic, and his girlfriend, Betty Ring, who was 18, were parked in a nice quiet spot near a junkyard in Floral Park when they were surprised by a man with a flashlight. The man stepped up on him out of nowhere with a flashlight and a thick German accent, of course. He shined the flashlight beam directly in their eyes and asked Mr. Soley for his driver's license. Then didn't even look at it. Instead, he started using the flashlight to send Morse code messages to some other fruitcake it was hiding somewhere out of sight. Then he asked Mr. Soley if he knew Joseph Mazinski. Mr. Soley said no, he didn't. Apparently, that was the wrong answer because the slapnut whipped out a revolver and shot him right in the mouth. That left Mr. Soley wheezing out that he wasn't the man the nutball was looking for through what was left of his mouth. Now, the wackadoodle just strode back of the car, and he looked at like he was on a Sunday walk, and he looked at the license plate, kind of like he was watching the Andy Griffith Show. Then came back to the window. He said, "You're the one we want, all right, and you're going to get what Joe got." Then he shot Mr. Soley in the side of his head. Then, just like he did with Mr. Mazinski, the maniac pounced halfway through the window and rifled through Mr. Soley's pockets while he was in the middle of his death throes. That's where he found a piece of paper and yelled, "I have it," to whoever was getting Morse code there a minute ago. Now, Miss Ring said that he ripped her out of the car by the hair of the head and attempted to outrage her, but decided better once he saw all the religious symbols that she wore around her neck. So, he rinsed and repeated by walking her to the bus stop, rode with her a few stops, then handed her her very own customized and autographed mini manifesto, which, again, he said don't read until the next day. Of course, once he ran for it, she unfolded it, and it read, "Soley, 3X, stamped out in the same old red ink." Back then, they did have ballistics testing, and it proved that the bullets that killed Mr. Mazinski and Mr. Soley came from the same weapon. A newspaper clipping about the Mazinski murder was found in Mr. Soley's pocket, marked with a little note saying, "Here's how." They found somebody's thick stack of cash money stuck between the pages of a magazine, which was covered with a mist of hair, teeth, and eyes. Now, that was in the car, too. First thing I thought was maybe it was a True Detective magazine, but really it didn't say the name of the magazine. So the next day, because he can't stop himself, another letter from 3X showed up. This time, it had the 2 spent shell casings from the Soley murder sealed up in it. It was addressed to the police officials, Inspector J. Gallagher and Lieutenant J. Smith. And it said, "For your information, one of J. Mazinski's friends was sent to meet him. V5 Soley was shot to death near Floral Park, not very far from the police station, mind you." I enclosed the 2 empty shells. Some of our money was found on his person, along with a New York document. The girl, as in the case of Miss May, was put aboard a bus and sent home. But no clues were left for you this time. 13 more men and women will go if they don't make peace with us and stop bleeding us to death. And because he still couldn't shut up, the morning of June 18th, he sent another mouthful of bunk to the Journal again, and it said, "Tonight, one more will go. You may let 'em know. 3X is the man behind the gun. He asks no quarter and he will give none. June 18th at 9 p.m., I will be at College Point to get WRV-8. Of course, that lunatic manifesto appeared in the Journal, which was probably the biggest paper in the city, led to the entire city walking around jumpy as a cat on a hot tin roof. Police called everybody they had available in and were out in extra full force. Every blamed lover's lane all over the city looked like it was dry as a desert with tumbleweeds rolling through it. And the parents kept their kids at home, too. Mr. 3X probably stood in his living room window drinking his coffee, watching the police patrol around with nobody else anywhere and laughing his hindquarters off at the whole thing because he didn't strike that night. Wasn't long before he showed up in Philadelphia, where he mailed another one of his letters. This time he sent it to John Mazinski, who was Joe's brother. The letter demanded that Mr. Mazinski deliver a collection of stolen documents, instructing him to leave them at Broad Street Station. Mr. Mazinski said that he didn't know what the moonbat was talking about and didn't know anything about any stinking documents, so he was placed under police protection for the time being. Then on June 21st, 3X sent another wackadoodle tirade once again addressed to the Evening Journal. Dear Sir, the last document, NJ4344, returned to us on 19th at 9 p.m. My mission is ended. There's no further cause for worry. I do not know Dr. Williams and the other. The first sign means A, the Supreme Tribunal of the Order. The second, V, is Special Agent. The two combined from the Red Diamond of Russia, a secret organization all over the world. Anybody breaking its rules is marked with death. These men dismissed for treason, and they were all our friends, but came in contact with a gang of blackmailers and drug ring and turned against us. One of them stole the documents mentioned before us, and they tried to use them for blackmailing our men. Most of us are soldiers, and every nation of the world is represented in our ranks. Word came to us at the Supreme Council in Russia of the peril of the US-12, and they picked me to extract punishment and inflict death if necessary. I have patiently waited. I have warned them all of danger. Instead of heeding my warning, they answered me by blackmail. They were requested many times to return the papers, but refused to surrender them. It was when Mazinski died that they found out who I am. Now, it is all over. The documents in question, one is a military document, another a political, and the third one surrendered was a commercial document. Who am I? Not much. An ex-German army officer of the Wilhelm Street office in Berlin during the war, now in the service of the Red Diamond of Russia. Yes, the code was addressed to Soli. Now it's all over. You showed me to be brave. Any man who took orders from his 77 is fearless. Your policemen are brave men, only they need training. I was watching them at CP on the 18th at 9 sharp. German officer never breaks his word. Yes, right there. Have you heard a plane? It was a monoplane, small, very fast. The plane circled over twice, over CP Bayside, then went away. If you did, then you know I was there. I have no fish eyes. The police have fish eyes. They have always been wrong from beginning to end. That's why they have lost from beginning to end. For two reasons. One, I have stated to you. The other, well, they're just too slow. I'm deeply sorry for having stained your country with blood, but let this be a warning to all concerned. Treason of one word means death. The next time, no mercy will be shown. Death only will be the penalty, but I hope I will not be the one to inflict it next time. We are not maniacs or bandits or robbers. Robbery never was the motive, and we do not belong to any dope ring. This is final. You know what I want, quiet your people and tell them that 3X is no more. Do not let anyone fool you. If you have any more letters come, they are fakes. I am leaving the U.S. today on my way back to Russia. Please note, I do not write USSR. We do not recognize them. There is no one else to begin trouble. It is settled. HP-12WA. And just like that, Mr. 3X said, his imposters and copycats all started up, trying to drive police nuts, which they did because police had to follow up on every single lead the Jack Monkeys put out. After being run ragged on that, police couldn't confirm any of them. The communications that came after that one was the real killer. And to top that off, there were no more murders that could be tied to him either. Of course, they didn't do anything to quiet down the panic all over New York. And the police couldn't really say that the nut job was actually gone either. So they kept going with the investigation even after the trail went cold. By the way, The Trail Went Cold is a great podcast. You might want to go. Anyway, that leaves us with the question, who was the lunatic that called himself 3X? Was he really one of them double and off spies like Jethro Bodine, where he was working for some off-the-wall version of a CIA? Or just another delusional maniac? Could he have been a member of some kind of secret anti-communist fighting cabal? Well, there ain't a bit of evidence that the Red Diamond of Russia ever existed outside the murders. Most folks think that have actually looked in it through the years, that it's pretty unlikely that it ever existed. For somebody that was supposed to be a member of that secret society, Mr. 3X had a bad case of diarrhea of the mouth about it. Either he thought that people would think he was crazy, or that he was flat out lying. Nobody to this day knows what all of them codes mean in his letters. He even claimed to be watching police while he was circling around in a plane like the Red Baron. Then he told police that he was done, and even told them his travel plans. All of that makes most historians doubt about everything he said. If it weren't already bad enough, after the murder stopped, folks were scared to death of Mr. 3X for years. 2 years later, during the Lindbergh baby kidnapping, folks were thinking that the nutball was part of it. They thought that Bruno Hauptmann, who was convicted for the crime, by the way, was part of the conspiracy. Supposedly Charles Lindbergh was a Nazi sympathizer, and the Red Diamond of Russia picked him up to terrorize. Once again, there was not a shred of evidence tying Mr. 3X to the case. I wonder if they ever thought that maybe Mr. Hauptmann could have actually been the whack job. I would think they did, but nobody ever wrote it down if they did. In 1937, a couple was found murdered on a lover's lane, their foreheads marked with red circles. First thing folks thought was that Mr. 3X was back. This was called the red circle slayings, and they were never solved either. But none of the evidence could be tied to Mr. 3X. Looking back on it from what we know today, our boy 3X does fit the classic serial killer dance, and he does it through his murders. He sent taunting letters and had a need for control and a quite inflated ego. Everything he did was pretty much what we see in serial killers today, except for walking the women to a bus and letting them go. In my humble Appalachian opinion, here's what I'm thinking. What if police were right to start with, and Catherine May wasn't quite the victim she complained or claimed? The victim of a two-timing knuckle-dragging lowlife might be a little more accurate. What if she maybe found a boyfriend who she felt actually treated her proper, and the two of them decided to put an end to Mr. Mazinski's, let's just call it young girl mentoring philanthropy work? After all, Miss May never reported the murder or her assault. She made conflicting accounts, even naming a former lover and known mobster before spitting the story we all know today. Now, when I heard about him, I started thinking just a little bit different about the whole thing. First 3X letters came in while she was still in custody. Second letter was written on stationery from Miss May's workplace and goes out of its way to exonerate her while running Mr. Mazinski into the dirt. Maybe Miss May got a mite pissed off at Mr. Mazinski and arranged a hit with, let's just say, somebody. Now the gunman then steps up, vents Mr. Mazinski's head, and they run for it, accidentally leaving Miss May's jacket stuffed up in the crime scene. If she hadn't left that, nobody'd ever known she was there. Second murder of Noel Soley, well, it happened while the police were still thinking Miss May wasn't exactly innocent. Who better to go out and whack somebody else just to clear his girlfriend's name than her mobster boyfriend, who pretty much did it for a living to start with? Maybe it was just all a setup to make the police believe that Mr. 3X was real. All Bugsy had to do was follow the script laid out by Miss May's statement. Miss Ring was dragged out of her car, but not outraged, probably because she was meant to be not to be a victim, but just maybe a real good witness to add credibility to it all. After nearly a century, the case of Mr. 3X, the man behind the gun, is still right where it was then, not a bit more ahead. Hope you got something out of our story today. If you did, please rate and review the podcast, or if you're watching on Spotify, YouTube, or Rumble, throw us a like, and don't forget to subscribe, follow, or, whatever you do wherever you're at and wherever you watch or listen. Now come on over to Appalachian Murder, Mystery, and Legend podcast group on Facebook, where we talk Appalachian about anything else you want to talk about. And I'll be back real soon with another Appalachian Murder, Mystery, or Legend. I will see you then.